and welcome. I'm Devika Devan and you're watching NewsX World. We begin with the headlines this hour. The death toll from the deadly earthquake in eastern Afghanistan has shot up to over 1,400, according to a government spokesman. At least 3,124 people have been reportedly injured following the disaster. Meanwhile, rescue efforts continue to save those stuck under the rubble. Russian President Vladimir Putin has slammed the European Union in his fresh comments on the war with Ukraine. He has said that the claims to attack Europe were just hysteria and horror stories. Putin said that Moscow had never opposed Ukraine's potential membership of the European Union. Russian attacks across Ukraine have claimed at least 8 lives. Over 29 people have been injured as per reports. Ukraine has said that it intercepted 120 also of 150 drones launched by Russia earlier today. The strikes come amid calls for a ceasefire between the two warring nations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with European leaders in Paris on Thursday as part of a renewed push to end the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Zelensky is set to meet the EU and NATO chiefs as well as German Chancellor and the British PM in Paris. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency has reported that Israeli airstrikes on a residential building and an apartment in Gaza City killed 13 people overnight, while 3 died in a separate helicopter strike in the west part of the city. The African Union has urged Sudan to silence the guns and allow aid delivery to victims of the deadly landslide in northern Darfur that has killed more than 1,000 people. Brazil's Supreme Court will start passing a judgment in the coup-related trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who faces over 40 years in prison if convicted of alleged attempts to retain power after losing the 2022 elections. Bolsonaro, who is under house arrest, will not be present for the verdict, which is expected by the 12th of September. Vietnam celebrates 80th Independence Day with its biggest military parade in decades. Vietnam's Communist Party chief Tu Lam has vowed to defend the nation's sovereignty down to every sacred inch of the land. And our top focus right now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has reaffirmed Russia's strong opposition to Ukraine joining NATO, calling the prospect unacceptable and a direct threat to Russian national interests. Speaking in Beijing during a meeting with Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, Putin emphasized that while Moscow has never objected to Ukraine's potential membership in the European Union, NATO expansion is a different matter entirely. He also dismissed growing fears in Europe that Russia could expand its military campaign beyond Ukraine. We have no intention of attacking anyone, said Putin. He accused the West of attempting to absorb the entire post-Soviet space and insisted that Russia's military actions are strictly defensive and aimed at protecting its national interests. Addressing the ongoing war, Putin stated that Russia is now responding seriously to Ukrainian attacks on its energy infrastructure. Putin also alluded to past dialogue with the United States, mentioning discussions held in Alaska, though he did not elaborate. While some reports have suggested potential cooperation between Russia and the U.S. regarding the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, there is no verified evidence of such talks. Mr. Glenn Grant, former advisor to the Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us on the broadcast. Mr. Grant, I have to understand from your perspective, when Vladimir Putin says that Russia will not have any objection to Ukraine joining the EU, what exactly do you make of that statement?
I think everything that Putin says is either a direct lie or a distraction. So I'm not actually sure why you're listening to him any more than listening to Hitler during the Second World War. It doesn't make any difference what he says because he'll change it to suit the circumstances as we go along. And his aim at the moment is to create the maximum distraction from people either away from the peace process or away from the actions that Russia is actually taking at the moment. For example, his comment that they have no axe to grind against the European countries, but he's attacking the European countries and has been solidly for probably now 15 years, including blowing up ammunition factories, cutting power cables between countries, and killing people on sovereign soil in Great Britain. And recently with the GPS attack on the aircraft flown by flown with the chief of the European Union. So I think that we need to just look beyond these things and understand that Putin is intent on this war, continuing the war and genocide in Ukraine. And that's the big picture. And we need to focus on the big picture, not what he's saying in detail with small things.
Okay, Mr. Grant, then focusing on the big picture, why do you think there is no effort being made towards even a temporary ceasefire, and what really becomes the end goal here? Because ultimately, someday the hope is that the war does have to end.
Well, I mean, let's look at this sensibly. There is a huge effort going on for a ceasefire, but it's on the Western side, with people looking to how we can actually protect Ukraine in the long run, and supporting Ukraine. But remember that Russia started the war. Russia doesn't want a ceasefire. If Russia goes for a ceasefire, it's only for a pause to allow it to regroup and then do something else. Because ceasefires are political activities. Russia intends to keep the war going. So any thoughts of a ceasefire are just, I'm sorry, but they're pie in the sky. And I've been saying this for months and months. Putin is buying time to try and take more ground in Ukraine, and this will continue.
All right, Mr. Grant, thank you so much for joining us in NewsX World with that perspective. In more news, Russian drones have struck the Zarichny district in Sumy today, causing a large fire in non-residential buildings. Acting Mayor Artem Kobzar reports that the attack struck a built-up area near kindergarten, injuring several civilians from shattered glass and debris. 2 explosions were heard shortly after midnight. Firefighters and emergency services have rushed to the scene and managed to contain the fire. However, parts of the city remain at risk due to heavy smoke and high temperatures. So far, no fatalities have been reported. An emergency response center has opened up this morning to assess the damage and assist the injured. Authorities continue to investigate the full extent of the impact. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Matty Zweig, geopolitical expert. Mr. Zweig, I have to understand from your perspective, in the current stalemate between the leadership of Russia and Ukraine, what really become the large-scale and long-term implications of continuous attacks on infrastructure? Mrs. Zweig, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mrs. Zweig, if you can hear me.
Hello. Yes, I can hear you, of course.
All right. My question to you is about the large-scale and long-term impact and implications of the continuous attacks on infrastructure, particularly in Ukraine.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having me. These things has been going on and on, of course, and the firefighters now are really trying to cope with all the heat, with all the flames that they're going through, spreading in all that area. But this is a new phase, I think, because they are also with missiles S-300 and S-400 attacking places like Mykolaiv, like Sumy. And this is very interesting also with Shahid and also with dozens of drones, which the Ukrainians say that about 60-65% they didn't enter their space, and all the rest, yes, they did the damage. Anyway, this is very special also because they are attacking areas like Summit that they didn't conquer and they are trying to get with their forces to that area for long months. And in the other side, you have places like Mykolaiv, like they have been inside and they continue to target enemy inside areas that have been conquered. So it means that there is opposition still from Ukrainian forces also in those areas, which means that the occupation or the victory is not total for the Russian side.
Mrs. Baig, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World with that perspective. In more news, Finland's President Alexander Stubb says progress is being made on security guarantees for Ukraine, but he adds that these measures require a peace agreement first. Stubb highlights ongoing talks with the United States, which would provide key support for the security plan. He says defense chiefs are working on the details of what an operation could look like. While optimistic about finding a solution soon, Stubb remains cautious about a ceasefire or a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia in the near future. Earlier, Stubb joined other European leaders in Washington to meet with President Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky, discussing prospects for peace. He warns the security situation in Europe will stay challenging and unpredictable for a long time. Mr. Ross Feingold joins us on the broadcast. Mr. Feingold, your thoughts on some of the comments coming out of Europe, because we now do see that there is a certain extent of a division of opinion as far as European Union leaders are also concerned, wherein Germany has clearly stated that there has to be a more practical approach to finding a defense deal, or rather locking in a defense deal with Ukraine for future protection. But at the same time, several European leaders are now talking about the potential of Ukraine joining the EU. Your thoughts on the same?
The interesting thing here is, yes, there might be some division among the key European leaders, such as Germany and Finland as well. Finland has played a key role in supporting Ukraine ever since Russia's invasion, and even more so after Finland joined NATO in 2023. So there might be some division about the details of what kind of security guarantee, which is the words some people often use in this context, or arrangement that Europe will make for Ukraine. But where there's no division among the key European countries, at least as of the moment, and this is crucial for Ukraine, is those key European countries, they still remain united in supporting Ukraine. They are willing to buy weapons from the United States per President Trump's demand. They're willing to continue to provide funding to Ukraine, and they're even willing to provide troops on the ground if that's the nature of a security arrangement in the context of a Ukraine-Russia ceasefire or long-term peace agreement. So yes, there's definitely some divisions about the details, but the crucial thing for the moment, and we don't know how long this will last, but for the moment, European countries generally remain united in their support for Ukraine.
Mr. Feingold, at the same time, when Europe now talks about the security challenge to the EU, how exactly will the European leaders then navigate the challenges that Russia could potentially pose in the years to come? And does Russia even pose that challenge? Because we've just heard Vladimir Putin say that this is just hysteria that's being created.
The European leaders are going to ignore Putin's view. Putin says that it's hysteria and Russia's not a threat. That doesn't mean the European countries are going to listen to him, especially the countries that border Russia, like the Baltic countries or Poland. So when it comes to their defense needs, I think it's pretty clear that the European countries have accepted, for the most part, most of them. There's been some outliers like Spain, but for the most part, European countries have accepted the reality, partly because of Russia, or for the most part because of Russia, and potentially other global challenges as well, even China, that they have to dramatically increase their defense spending. They might have to increase the amount of time that young men serve in military service, and they have to demonstrate that to their key security partner, which is the United States. And we know that President Trump, from his first term and now continuing in his second term, he's been very critical, as has his team, about the commitment to defense spending by European countries. And to be fair to the European countries, they're starting to address this. And they've accepted that reality. Now, that does mean that other spending priorities of European countries are going to come under pressure, and especially these are countries that have a big social welfare state, all sorts of subsidies for childcare or education, early retirement compared to other countries around the world. So their spending priorities in their budgeting process are definitely going to come under pressure. But again, I think it's fair to say that they've accepted the reality that they have to significantly increase their defense spending.
Absolutely, Ms. Feingold. Thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World with that perspective. We leave it there. In other news, mourners in Gaza City hospital have held prayers for Palestinians who were earlier killed in Israeli strikes. Recent Israeli strikes in Gaza have claimed at least 13 lives. Meanwhile, in leaflets dropped over Gaza City, Israeli military told residents to head south immediately. This has come after Israeli Defense Forces intend to expand their offensive westward of the city. Palestinians in Gaza City say that they are trapped in a cycle of displacement. They've expressed their frustration, saying that they are growing tired of fleeing from one place to another. Israel is pushing ahead with a plan to take full control of the whole Gaza Strip, starting with Gaza City, intending to destroy Hamas after nearly 2 years of the war. This comes after fears of expansion of famine in other regions of Gaza. The humanitarian crisis is expected to worsen as Israel plans to put more troops on the ground. Palestinians have talked about displacement and other issues that they are facing. Listen in.
منطقتنا عشوائي من القذائف فاضطرينا ان نسيب صار عندنا شهداء من العائله فاضطرينا نسيب البيت ونطلع ولقيت احنا طالعين من بيتنا بسبب هذه القصف لقيت احنا احفادي في المستشفيات في منهم نايمين في مستشفى اصدقاء المريض في منهم نايمين في مستشفى المعمداني عشان هيك احنا اصبحنا عائله متشرده جزء منا في خيام جزء منا في المستشفيات
الحرب يعني احنا وقف شلال الدم يعني احنا بصراحه وصلنا لمرحله انه الموت اهون من النزوح يعني خلص يعني احنا كلنا حنموت بالدور يعني انا بشايف انه احنا عباره عن جثث متحركه ناس 200 بس احنا نستنى كل واحد دوره يعني احنا بدنا ننزح.
Mr. Matty Zweig, geopolitical expert, joins us on the broadcast. Mr. Zweig, what do you make of the current situation in Palestine, where several civilians are now clearly claiming that they're pretty tired of the fact that they're being moved from one camp to another, while some of their critical needs of food are not being addressed? How exactly can Israel then justify to continue its attack against Hamas if it's not ready with a plan to evacuate civilians?
I am sure the civilians are tired, and I am sure also that the Israeli society is tired. But in the middle of this, you have a genocidal jihadist group called Hamas, that they don't want to release the hostages. They don't want to dismantle themselves when all the world, including Europe and the US and the Arab countries, has said that they don't have to continue in power. They don't do that. And this inner circle of violence that you are talking about is the cause of the continuation of this war. And Israel is in a war, not in a genocide, but in a war with an enemy. And this enemy is trying to avoid humanitarian aid that is passing for hundreds of trucks a day to Gaza. So all this war of propaganda, this is just the continuation, the propaganda arm in the social media is not what is really happening, because what is really happening is that Hamas don't want to free the hostages to stay in power and to try to, to take all the world with them, even if they're going to destroy them. Because this is what is going to happen. They are giving a good reason for the actual Israeli government to continue their attacks and to continue to try to dismantle them by force, even knowing that this is going to threaten the lives of the still alive hostages that Hamas saved. So this is the circle, especially from two sides. One side that is going to continue attacking, and the other side that is going to continue not freeing the hostages, not dismantling themselves, and continuing this endless war because it's good for them. The only way to continue in power. Unfortunately, this is what is going on.
Mrs. Wig, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World with that perspective. Meanwhile, the deadly 6-magnitude earthquake in Afghanistan has claimed at least 1,400 lives, with the toll expected to rise further. According to the Afghan Red Crescent, more than 3,000 people have been injured and over 8,000 houses have been destroyed. The UN's humanitarian corridor for Afghanistan has warned that the earthquake disaster could impact hundreds of thousands of people, calling blocked routes the single biggest challenge for relief efforts. Rescue workers say hundreds remain trapped under rubble, but reaching remote areas has been hampered by severe damage to roads. The quake hit at 23:47 local time on Sunday, with its epicenter 27 kilometers away from Jalalabad, the country's fifth largest city in eastern Nangarhar province. Let's hear into what the civilians have had to say.
شايد زلزلة أقوسم ده وسط مصر ولا يروح وسم ده خبرت واجده لما تسيجي طول ما نتلي واجده أو الله ده مصر كوم بقولي مصر إسلامي أمارة تلاس كوم بقولي نور نالي تلاس كوم بقولي أو إذا قالت تتمين واجده خبرت واجده كور طول ما نتلي هيك ما تجيش.
So there you've heard it. We've now learned that the death toll has risen to 1,400 people in this earthquake. At least 3,000 people have been injured in the Afghan earthquake so far. 8,000 houses remain destroyed. You've just heard in from a civilian in Afghanistan who says that they felt the earthquake at around 12 in the night and their entire house was destroyed. Mr. O.P. Mishra, Director of National Seismology Center in India, joins us from New Delhi. Mr. Mishra, I want to understand from your perspective, what becomes the biggest challenge when earthquakes such as these strike? Mr. Mishra, can you hear me?
Please be louder. Please be louder.
Mr. Mishra, what becomes the biggest challenge when earthquakes like the one in Afghanistan strike?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is that now it has been proved that earthquake can hit in the already demarcated seismogenic zone. Where the Afghanistan earthquake happened, it is happened at the seismogenically already demarcated zone where the Kashmir Hazara Texas zone meeting the Silok thrust zone. So it was the intersection point where it is the locked zone that has been ruptured. But the thing is that it was a very deeper earthquake, 160 kilometer magnitude 6.3. Even though the shaking able to destroy several houses and kill the people, several hundreds. This means that those structures were unengineered structure based on the unscientific parameterization. So earthquake actually impact was bad because of the bad structures, worse structure in Afghanistan. So it gives a message that each and every country who have the seismogenically already demarcated provinces, they should have to take the care of your earthquake risk resilient building based on the engineering design code. That is one of the solution. And we know that where we are staying, because entire Himalayan zone is seismogenic provinces, as well as even the Andaman Nicobar, as well as the plate interior, Bhuj and Latur areas, these have also witnesses the earthquake, devastating earthquake in the past. So earthquake can hit anywhere at any point of time. And when the shearing and bearing strength of the rock exceeded by the stress accumulation. And second point is that it is a transboundary earthquake can hit to different countries. Here, whatever the earthquake happened in Hindu Kush region in Afghanistan, where the Indian plate subducting beneath the Eurasian plate is terminated, and that is the locked part. So most of the shaking is also felt by the Delhites or NCR Delhi, because it is surface wave that passes from long distances, about 1,000 kilometer or 900 kilometer away. This earthquake is 903 kilometer away from Delhi. Even if the Gurugram and other part of the NCR felt the shaking.
Mr. Mishra, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World with that perspective. And that's all that we have time for. We will continue to bring you more updates from around the world on the other side. Stay tuned.